Florida State University in music education and choral conducting. In addition to his many accolades for his choirs, in 2018, he was named the Florida Music Education Association Secondary Music Educator of the Year. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thank you, Alice. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation to present at Voices United. And I'm so glad that the conference committee decided to go forward with this virtual format. As I was just saying to Max, who's our tech coordinator, and Alice, our host, that I think that one of the best things that has come out of this terrible situation with COVID is our choral community coming together and crowdsourcing information and doing everything we can to help each other get through this extremely difficult and trying time. So I'm thrilled to be here this morning, and we're going to dive right in to a little bit discussion about tone building through daily choral warm-ups. So as Alice said, I've been a high school choral director here in the great state of Florida for many years. I'm joining you live from my office here in Tallahassee. I am at home with my two beautiful dogs, and they don't really understand this online meeting format, so we might hear from them, even though that I've given them a little busy bone to keep them occupied. But they're beautiful and wonderful and very well behaved and perfect, and they might bark, so bear with me if they do. A little bit about this presentation. The idea came to me over kind of years of participating as a performer and an adjudicator in our performance assessments here in Florida, and kind of realizing that tone is the big thing that we are dealing with a lot of the time in those assessments when we make decisions about ratings. And I was really interested when Florida introduced this program called Choirs of Distinction. And for high school choirs, that's at our state level, and 2 of 3 judges have to award a Superior with Distinction rating to earn a Choir of Distinction. For middle schools, at the district level, 2 of 3 judges have to award that. And we're seeing this program yield about 10 or 20 Choirs of Distinction each year. And it's been an amazing way to kind of hear what the best in our state is. The high school choirs actually get put onto a CD, and then that's distributed to every high school director that participated in state that year. So it's a wonderful resource for repertoire as well as hearing these great choirs. And this is just one way of identifying a great choral program in any state through an adjudication process. There's no rubric involved. It's just the opinion of the judges based on that one performance. And so I decided this might be a way to kind of isolate a group of outstanding music educators. So I contacted these wonderful directors, and I asked them to submit to me a warm-up video that showed a view of them primarily. And then I analyzed those videos using some behavioral and descriptive research techniques. And I'm not going to belabor this point. We're not here to talk about research, but 5-second interval observation, I tracked their behaviors. I just basically wrote down everything they did and then looked for patterns. And this presentation is kind of a synthesis of what I found, plus a healthy dash of my own biases and opinions. And I'll try to make sure that I indicate like this was something I found from my research, and this is a little bit of my bias or opinion, because I want to be clear about that. So there were basically 5 elements to these warm-ups that I saw commonality among the videos that I analyzed, and that was physical/posture, breath, vocal technique, intonation, and gestures and/or solfege. So let's break this down a little bit further with some of the behaviors that we saw from these outstanding teachers. So in the physical and posture category, obviously, many of us start our warm-ups with a stretch. I also saw routines of stretching where clearly this is what they were doing every day. They did maybe some relaxation exercises, some focusing. We all know that students come into our classrooms with all sorts of different energies. And these exercises help to just kind of calm, quiet, and focus for the task ahead. And there was also in a lot of the examples that I looked at, a review of posture elements and an emphasis on, of course, good singing posture. In that second category, breath, there was an emphasis on measured inhales and exhales. I'll describe that a little bit later. Rhythm with unvoiced consonants as a call and response. Obviously, that's very engaging to students. They love to play with rhythm. And let me just say really quickly that my new friend Alice is monitoring the comments on YouTube for questions. So if you have a question, please post one in the comments and we will take some time at the end to address those. Back to breath. Another thing that we saw in these warm-ups was using our hands to touch our bodies, touch the ribs, feel the expansion in the lower back, lots of body alignment. And that is so important. I think that students often don't really realize, they breathe from the diaphragm, and there's a chance there to kind of reinforce some of what you're talking about with a physical kinesthetic experience. In vocal technique, these teachers were talking about resonance in space, connecting head and chest voice, and using terms like head and chest voice. They were also using semi-occluded exercises. That would be something where you're partially closing or limiting the sound that's coming out of your mouth. That could be a lip trill. It could be a lip bubble where you put your tongue in between. I'm sorry if this is graphic, but as opposed to so trill or bubble. You could also do a straw exercise. Obviously, in the age of COVID, that's something that we're going to have to be a little bit more careful with. But I know many teachers that used to pass out coffee straws and have students sing through that straw. And the idea is, you start with that resistance of the straw and take it away, put it back in, and feel what the breath does. It's kind of like being an oboe player, and think about how they use their air. So just a way of getting students to perhaps be more engaged from their breathing apparatus. There are companies that sell stainless steel straws that are on a necklace that could be useful. Everybody has their own. They're not that expensive, and you would have to have some, of course, germ magic to keep those clean and healthy for everybody. There's obviously an emphasis on mouth shape. We all know that we talk about lip shape, but also talking about teeth, tongue, how those things are all working together, and a lot of modeling. And let me say that modeling is something that all of us find challenging. We're all on a vocal journey of our own, but you are the primary vocal model for your students as well as the primary voice teacher. So feel comfortable with your model. If you don't feel comfortable, work on getting more comfortable. Maybe pursue some voice lessons, or if you really feel like you are not the best vocal model, bring in people to help you and to sing for your kids, because they need to hear quality trained voices. We all know that pop music of our current time is a very limited range affair. You may have noticed that all women sing in a low chest voice and all men sing in a falsetto. All pop songs are in that same middle range, around middle C up to G, and then G below that, in that kind of octave. And our girls are singing that music at pitch down there with them, and our boys are singing it an octave lower or 2 octaves lower. So we want to hear models of all different kinds of voices, all different kinds of vocal training, but kind of always come back to the idea that this quote unquote bel canto style that many of us are using is a style of vocal training that can benefit every genre of singing, because you're singing with good breath support and hopefully good intonation, which is the bottom line of every kind of singing. So if you're scared to model, don't be. You are the authority in your classroom, and own yourself and your voice. And if you really feel that that is something you can no longer do, or you've had a vocal injury, then look at some people that can come in and help you as demonstrators and assistants. Intonation. I feel like we tell our kids a lot of intonation, but we don't teach them how to hear it themselves sometimes, and how to fix it on their own. We say that's flat, that's sharp. How do they respond? What are they thinking? You can address that in your warm-up. Some of the things that we saw in our warm-up videos were a cappella and accompanied warm-ups. One really brilliant one that I cannot emulate was the students sang a pedal tone, and then the director just played a variety of chords underneath, consonant, dissonant. It was amazing. I wish I had that ability to just improvise amazing jazz progression. If that's you, that's awesome. But maybe you could find somebody who can record one for you that you can work with. There's always a way to work through it. But I think another thing that I saw a lot of was using dissonance, getting students to sing. If you want to get to Eric Whitacre tone clusters someday, start with some dissonance in your warm-ups. Sing things in the like a round of solfege scale at a second instead of, at a fifth or a more pleasing consonant interval. And lastly, include some harmonic warm-ups. This can be a million different things. It can involve solfege. It can be pre-prepared hymns and chorales. It can be your school song, whatever, something where they're working not only on technique of the voice, but also blend and balance and musical elements as well. I saw a lot of use of gesture, and this is actually something that I'm, as one of my research interest areas, is the use of gesture in choral rehearsals and choral singing. And there was a lot of use of arm and hand gestures in these warm-ups. And here are the things that we need to know about them. They were intentional. They weren't just thrown up there. There was a meaning to them, and the students clearly understood that meaning. And there was also a consistent application. I know that in my own rehearsal, sometimes I would be encouraging my students to do a hand gesture of some kind, and there was always 2 or 3 that were, kind of in the back, partially doing it, or what I call T-Rex arms, where you just kind of don't really engage all the way. And that's not helpful. If they're not doing that gesture with intent and with focus, it's not going to have any meaning for them. So what I saw from all these teachers was that everybody was doing those gestures and everybody kind of cared about them. It was important. And lastly, there was a very common use of the Kerwin hand signs for the solfege scale. So what are some other things I noticed about teaching behaviors in these rehearsals? The first was that there were some clear routines established. These teachers are not only masters at teaching their students to sing a beautiful tone, they're master teachers. There's some serious classroom management going on. And because they had everything established in routines, they didn't need to talk a lot. There wasn't a lot of correcting of behaviors because there was a clear behavior expectation. The pacing was very quick and very efficient. They were moving quickly from idea to idea. The students clearly knew that that was going to be the pattern of behavior. So as soon as one warm-up was finished, the next warm-up was introduced and they were on to the next thing. There wasn't a lot of kind of waiting and, well, what do you want to do next? And that sort of thing. So a clear plan was in place, which allowed for some excellent pacing. There was high engagement of students and teachers. As I said, in those gestures, every kid was on board. The teacher was modeling in a very high affect, meaning that they were going for it. They were living their best teacher life. And we all know that teachers are the ultimate performers. We do a 7 to 8 hour show every single day and go back the next day and do it again. So be a performer. Don't let warm up be a time that you're focused on something else. Use hustles. Hustles are when we talk over the kids. Round your lips. Where's the breast support? That as they're singing, we're using hustles. And there's been some research, actually from one of my colleagues here at Florida State, Adams Roost, that suggested that's pretty powerful in rehearsal. And I think we can transfer that into warm-up. So use those hustles. They may not always hear them, but there is a positive effect there. And also, these teachers were using a sequenced instruction model. And what I mean by that, if you're not familiar with direct instruction or sequenced instruction, the idea is that you give the students a task, they perform the task, and you give them immediate feedback. And it should be specific, and that leads to either specific positive. You did a great job, we were working on diction, and your diction was great. Or it's corrective, you know what, we were working on diction and the diction wasn't the best, let's work specifically on this one element and see if you're going to do better there. Or maybe you're going to give them some negative feedback and then end it with, the diction wasn't there, but we were in tune, or whatever it's going to be. So that sequence instruction model. So in a warm up, that would be like the kids sing and they immediately get some feedback. We were working on intonation in the passaggio. So the intonation wasn't very good. Let's do it again, trying this. They perform again, you give them more feedback. So basically it's just instruction, feedback, instruction, performance, feedback, instruction, performance, feedback. It should be a chain. And there was a lot of that being demonstrated in these rehearsals. They were using proper names and correct terminology. So that is something that's going to help your students gain some fluency in those things that we would hope they should know: the larynx, the palate, how to spell palate correctly, P-A-L-A-T-E, where those things are, some anatomy, head voice, chest voice, nasal, for pharynx. All these are words that we would hope maybe students are starting to grasp onto. And we don't always get there, but let's maybe engage these teachers that are doing an outstanding job of teaching voice in the classroom are really getting students to buy into it. So students are interested in learning more about their instrument. So let's give them some words to do that with. The student engagement is reflecting the teacher. As I said, these teachers are high affect. They're living their best teacher life. They are performing, and the students are reflecting that. Even though they were warming up, and in many situations, the teacher was being very intense, there was still an aura of happiness or joy or intensity or focus or something in the room. It was really inspiring to see these people working at the top of their craft. And lastly, in every single instance, I got to see the teacher flip from the rehearsal, from the warm up into the rehearsal before somebody turned their camera off. And that was seamless. There was clearly a connection between the last thing they did in warm up and what they were going to rehearse next. So let's talk about building your own tone building daily warm up based on some of these ideas. So the idea here is that I'm going to give you some of my own ideas and some ideas that I saw from these wonderful teachers. But what really I would love for you to do is, as I'm talking through them, be thinking, oh, I do a warm up like that already, and start pulling in your own things. You don't need to totally reinvent your wheel based on this presentation. That's not the goal at all. But instead, I want you to examine what you're already doing and see if you can do it in a way that might be more effective or more instructive, or what have you. So the two big ideas are intentionality of students and teachers. The teacher is not going through the motions of the daily warm-up. And everybody that is an active classroom teacher knows that while you're warming up the choir, you're also taking attendance and you're talking to your booster president because the candle fundraiser is going to be 2 weeks late. And Madison M is crying because Madison R told Maddie that Madeline, etc. You've all been there. So-and-so is walking in late. Your most evil kid is in the corner setting something on fire. Like warm up time tends to be a little bit like, no, all right, who's here? Oh, so instead of doing those other activities and focusing on all the things we have to focus on as multitasking choral directors, warm-up should be a kind of a precious time to you. That's the time where you are engaging your students in teaching them to be better singers. And if they are better singers with better understandings of how to use their voice, then your ensemble is going to get better. You can have a better product. You can do more challenging music. It's just going to take off from there. So the biggest takeaway from today is be intentional with warm-ups and use that time to its full benefit. So that might involve some other thing in your teaching routine to allow you the time to deal with all the emergencies that happen in the the 5-minute bell change, so that you can really focus on warm-ups and being that intentional, engaged instructor. So the first part of the warm-up is going to be maybe 60 to 90 seconds. I will say, my personal bias, I like a long, in-depth warm-up. I've taught on hour and a half blocks, I've taught on 2-hour blocks, and I've taught on 50 minutes. And in a 50-minute period, I would spend 20 minutes on a warm-up, because I felt like if the kids were able to use the full depth and breadth of their voice after the warm-up, they would be more ready to get into repertoire and do the things we wanted to do. I know that as a singer, I find it frustrating to dive into repertoire without being warmed up, because my voice just isn't ready to do that yet. I need a little bit of time. And so of course, these children are not going to be ready to warm themselves up on their own before class. And so I advocate taking some time. Minimum 1 minute spent on physical. So maybe this is the one place that you let a student be in charge. I am aware that some people let students run warm-ups, or they use warm-ups from a CD. Again, I'm advocating to you that you be the leader and you be intentional, because you're the authority. A student can absolutely lead some stretches for you. I had a daily routine that I'm sure any of my students, if you found them on the street, could take you through our little warm-up routine that involved some stretching, maybe some light massaging, also a building of posture every day, kind of like setting our posture for the day. And those are things that students can do while you're wrapping up the crying 8th grader in your office. That's something that a student can do. And you can say to the kids, like, if I'm not here and warm up should be starting, someone should start the stretch routine. And you're going to quickly be able to identify, well, this person's ready to be a leader because they stood up and did it. So you just have to teach it to them. It serves to focus and relax them. They come into your room in all sorts of headspace, and you want them to be singing at their most beautifully with, emotional understanding and expressive understanding, and they're not ready to do that. They're coming from who knows what in the class before, and this time serves to focus and relax. So take that time and use it. And again, be intentional. If they're not fully stretching, that's not okay. Be on them. So what are some elements we might see? Stretches of arms, back, shoulder, chest, and face. That could include basically anything you can think of. Elements from yoga and meditation practices. My friend Tucker Biddlecombe at Vanderbilt University has a great one that he does where you're pulling back an arrow string and you do it on both sides. It's a wonderful stretch, and it's a little bit different. So the kids are like, oh, what's this? Something new. So maybe you have a stretch routine that you do every day, and then there's always a little something different at the end. Maybe some days it's massage, some days it's something from yoga. Remind them about their posture. You know that children don't want to stand the way you want them to stand. You got to ingrain that in them, get that muscle memory going. And lastly, I think some tension and release exercises are really valuable in calming them down. And, there's really so many things you can do where you're holding and then releasing, and holding tight and releasing, and just letting kind of go some of that tension. The next element is breath. A minimum of 30 seconds. We, of course, know that breath is the engine from which good vocal tone springs. So this, at the beginning of the year, is a big focus in my classroom that I'm not actively teaching, but it would still be, because I think breath it's everything. And they don't understand how to use it, and they're not going to unless you tell them. So let this be just part of a larger focus on breath support. Again, breathing exercises help focus and relax. They stretch out all those muscles in the core that we're going to be using, and they get us ready to produce some good supported tone. And again, I like to let students touch things and feel expansions and say, this is what you should be feeling. So what are some elements that I saw in the videos? Measured intake and outtake patterns. So for example, that would be breathing in for 4, holding for 4, and out for 4. Let's try that together. So in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, blow your air out. 1, 2, ready, go. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. And one thing that I always like to do when I'm doing inhalation breath exercises is kind of always show them that beat 4 going up. so that they start to tie that gesture with a open mouth, full breath. We all have wonderful exercises that we do with breath support, blowing everything out through a straw, through sip up the whole milkshake, fill every little part of your cavity. Another thing that I saw was a lot of call and response rhythm patterns, like shh, 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 and they would repeat. Use all those different unvoiced consonants. That's also going to transfer to diction practice. One of my professors here at FSU, Kevin Fenton, he'll put a wheel of consonants on the board, F, S, T, K, P, and then you do each one a certain number of times. So you might start with fives. And then you keep going around until you, and then take away. So you do fives, then fours, then threes, then twos, and then just one. And again, you play with tempo. Anything that's rhythmic and plays with tempo, the kids are naturally engaged by. I would also advocate to use some airspeed exercises. What I mean by that, say we're gonna do a lip trill. So we might be lip trilling for 8 counts. And in the last 4 counts, I'm gonna ask you to speed up. So you're gonna breathe with me on beat 4. 1, 2, 3, breathe, lip trill, 2, and now move your lip trill faster. And you engage that core breath. And that's where you can start talking about that feeling, that crunch, so-called, the crunch, the intercostals, all that, those muscles kind of engaging. That is what we talk about. That's what we mean when we say engaging your breath, is you have to really actually physically do something. Next, we're going to talk about connectors. Connectors are going to get us started with some singing in kind of an easy way. They're getting to, you're starting to connect some actual vocalism with supported breath. And just maybe we're going to start talking about some head voice and chest voice connections. And it's a good kind of transition from the stretch breathe part into the sing part. So this section, a minimum of 15 seconds, might include sirens on open vowels and lip trills from head to chest, back and forth. So that might sound like, oh, and those kind of things. If you are a male teacher working with female students, and you don't have a great falsetto, you might want to have some female models come in and help them understand that you want them to get all the way up into their soprano register. If you're a female teacher working with male students, you might want to bring somebody in to talk about how getting down to the chest voice. One thing that I love to do, I stole this from Matthew Swope at Winter Park. If you're not stealing things from other people, you're crazy. That's what our profession is about, is taking the best of what we all know and working together. So please feel free to steal, but I do like to give credit. So this is from my friend Matthew. Matthew will put one hand on his chest and say, chest, 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 head, 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 chest, 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 head, 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 or head, middle, chest. That kind of thing is effective with getting them to start understanding these feel different. When my hand is on my sternum, a great anatomical term, when my hand is on my sternum and I say chest, I feel resonance down here. As opposed to when I speak up here, I don't feel resonance. Guys love to talk in their Mickey Mouse voices and their Darth Vader voices. But anything that's going to start getting them to understand there's 2 different things going on here. And when my teacher says I'm singing under the pitch, perhaps I'm singing with too much chest voice or things like that. You're going to have to help them make those connections. Sustained hums and ums, just kind of to get people singing long tones from our brass friends. Again, this is that warm up perhaps where you're humming on one note and underneath there's some chordal playing on the piano, and they're just sustaining and spinning and just kind of feeling that connection and sound while simultaneously, getting the larynx moving. And lastly, chewing and manipulating space inside the mouth. They don't understand. I'm being mean to students. I keep saying they don't understand, but they don't. They're not trained singers. They don't understand that inside the mouth, there's all this different space we can do. So encourage them to, maybe they're humming and chewing. As I do that, I'm feeling resonance in all sorts of different places. Well, what is resonance? Oh, it's that kind of tingly vibration feeling. You can say to them, after that exercise, where did you feel some tingles and vibrations on your face? And they might point here or here or here. And you can reinforce like, yeah, that's where we're looking to feel tingles and vibrations. We call that resonance, or whatever your terminology is going to be. Now we get into a section I call 5-note wonders. These are the ones we all know. It's let me turn my keyboard back on. Anything from that in the do re mi fa so canon of warm-ups that we all know, and they're getting us started. They're producing sound easily in mid-range. They're connecting. We're still talking about, hey, are you connecting the breath? What's your posture looking like? We're still thinking of those other elements as we're moving on, and we can work on vowel color and blend with these exercises. I had a kind of a big wake-up moment as a young teacher where Dan Gordon, who was at Crane at SUNY Potsdam, is now back here in Florida with us as a church musician, heard my kids sing, and he said, tell me about your warm-up process. And I was like, well, I start on middle C, because that's what I think, that's what I always have done. And he was like, why are you starting in the chest voice? And I didn't have an answer. And he had noticed that at the time, and it was my second year of teaching at my second job, I was kind of battling some musical theater belters in my choir that could not give it up or couldn't understand that there's a connection between great classical singing and great belting. And so he really encouraged me to start every day in the head voice. And so I started, by this point in my daily warm-up, I would be starting on an E flat. And after a little bit of sirening and humming and chewing, most voices are there. And your little baby boys, and maybe not middle school, but I'm talking about high school in this instance. I think middle school girls definitely should be singing this in a nice way. Can start there on a lip trilly kind of 5-note wonder. And when you start on the same note every day, you're also building in pitch memory. I know some people start on concert A, but my kids had E flat memorized. So I like to start in head voice and work down, still kind of in a hummy, lip trilly, connectory kind of way, before I get into whatever you're going to do. And you spend a little bit of time in there. Maybe you're working on something like a semi-occlusion to an open, like this. Or semi-occluded alternating with open. And that's reinforcing the support of the lip trill with the openness of the mouth. Utilize both diatonic and intervallic patterns. Everything shouldn't be a scale. Everything shouldn't be an arpeggio. Use different things and alternate between closed and open vowels, like something like this. We could do E being more closed and O being more open. O, oo, o, e, ah, all those classic warm-ups that you already are doing in your classroom. This is where you fit those in if you want to maybe consider restructuring your warm-up a little bit. So after we spend a while with our 5-note wonders, just a little bit of singing and working on vowels and lip shapes, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about resonance. So again, minimum of 30 seconds. You're promoting, obviously, most of us would promote forward resonance, singing in the mask. If you're maybe a little bit more familiar with vocal pedagogy, you know that some of those things really aren't what's happening, but most singers have been taught to sing by sensation, and you just embrace it. You don't have to be a vocal pedagogue. And if you want to get more into that, there's some excellent text out there and excellent resources. But for our purposes, we're starting to get kids to sing in what we hope is a healthy way, so that then if they want to pursue something at the collegiate level, they're ready. That they're not walking in with no idea of technique, but you can really build beautiful voices in the choral context without a single voice lesson, and it's amazing. And it's one of the most, I think, kind of like I waved a wand. I did some sort of magic, and I don't completely understand it, and I had to go back and kind of break it down for myself as to what was happening there. And then I was reinforced by seeing these videos of my colleagues. And that's why I thought this was important information to share. So anyway, back to resonance. We're obviously promoting some forward resonance. We want to experiment with different colors of the voice using different pharyngeal spaces. I watched a really fascinating YouTube video a couple of days ago where an American actress who's an expert in accents was analyzing different British accents in movies. And she was talking about, the British accent being more of a forward resonance and the American accent being more of a pharyngeal. And it was fascinating. And something like that could be really interesting and engaging to students, and they can make a transfer to their singing. And lastly, this is a place where we might want to utilize some gestures if we haven't already. Again, we're using our 5-note wonder patterns, and maybe we're starting to expand a little bit. It's always great to get them up to la and down to T with something like this. Or this. This one is zinga zinga zoo, zinga zoo, zinga zinga zoo, zinga zoo, zinga 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 zoo. Get us all the way up there to la, because we don't want to get trapped in a land where we only ever sing do and up to so and back down. So let's talk about alternating extreme nasality and extreme darkening. That would be something where you're like quacking or meowing or making some sort of silly sound. And again, your kids are going to laugh and be silly, but we want them to be open to making some ugly, weird, silly sounds in an intentional way. So you have to get through the laughter a little bit and be like, no, this has a purpose, and let's talk about it, and here's what it is. So you might do like meow, 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 meow. What's the difference in those feelings? What about sustained exercises that move from forward resonance to space? So that would be something like, kind of going through all those vowel blends and shapes. There's a really great one from my friend Justin Chase at Lake Nona High School. He calls it Kittens and Aliens. And you do kitten whiskers. So it's meow, 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 meow. And then you do a UFO around your head. Ooh, very dark and closed. And he uses that, he might then later transfer that into rehearsal by saying, I need some more kitten sound, or I need some more alien sound. And that's kind of a fun shorthand for his choir to understand, oh, Mr. Chase wants a brighter sound here. He wants a darker sound here. Use terms like bright and dark. There's a text by Alan Zabriskie where he calls those chiaro, the Italian word for light, and oscuro, the Italian word for darkness or shadow. That's also a term we see used in theater and art. So that's a fun transfer you can make for your art and theater kids, chiaro oscuro. And talk about the palate with them and the teeth. Renee Fleming talks about her signature angry bunny teeth when she has to kind of sustain a high note. And you can show your kids a video of Fleming singing, and you see her really singing into the teeth. And maybe that's a shorthand you can incorporate, like, oh, we need some more angry bunny teeth. We need more teeth in our sound. What are you really saying? I want it brighter. I want it more towards the hard palate. And that's a great way to kind of start building in some of these vocal technique ideas that are so common in kind of our collegiate vocal training. Range builders. We want to work both ends of the range. We spend a lot of time working on high notes, which is great, but high school altos can sing with colorful chest voice, and you have to teach them how to do it. Define range expectations for students. What should my range be? Maybe I'm a changing voice boy, and you're keeping track of that. Like, oh, you're all over the place, something different every week. But help them to understand, like, no, an A above the staff is a note that sopranos should be able to sing. A G below the staff is a note that altos are expected to sing. Let's talk about how to sing those in a healthy and well-produced way. And again, we're going to incorporate some gestures. So chest voice exercises. One that I had a wonderful voice teacher friend use with my kids that I really stuck with was, and then down by half steps. and the basses and the altos really learned to develop some sound down there that we could carry into our repertoire. And it's and you can talk to them and say like, hey, you know what, when altos, when you sing with your radio voice, when you're singing along in the car with your favorite female artist, you can bring some of that color in. It is some of that sound, but it's a great opportunity to talk about belting. It's a great opportunity to talk about, you know, grinding. If you can feel grinding or any sort of pain, stop singing and come for some help. But help them learn about their chest voice in a little bit more of a focused way. I think we neglect chest voice a lot. And then you can sing great women's choir repertoire because your altos are beasts and they love to sing low notes. Another one that I really love to do with my singers involves a hand gesture. So I'm originally from the Orlando area, so I'm going to use some Disney-friendly pointing fingers. And you're going to sing an arpeggio. Yo, ho, 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 ho. And the idea is that your fingertips kind of come together on that top note, and you're also, so there's a physical, and this is where you don't want to use no T-Rexes on this one. All right, you got to use your full extension, and then you sing it staccato and then legato. Yo ho 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 ho. Yo. How do we sing staccato? How do we sing legato? What did you feel different about the way your breath apparatus moved? What did you notice about the way you had to open your mouth for the higher pitch? Engage them by asking questions. Again, my voice teacher friend, Tamara, did a wonderful exercise that I loved with my girls. This is really for high school ladies, again, to start building some tone. And let me also say that vibrato is something that I did encourage my kids to sing with vibrato if it was naturally produced. I sing with vibrato. I like vibrato singing. And I think if you are teaching them to sing with vibrato, then you can also teach them to sing with minimized vibrato, but still a spinny sound. I don't like the word straight tone. I think that most sopranos hear straight tone and just immediately go to a tight, kind of strained place. And I don't want that sound. I want it to still have spin. So I do think vibrato is important, and you can encourage singers to sing with vibrato. Some of them are not physically capable or physically ready, and that's okay. And you talk with them about that. And you're teaching, hundreds of voices in very short little tiny group lessons. So sometimes you have to realize you've overdone it with somebody. I definitely have had experiences where I've had to call a sweet girl in my office and say, okay, you are listening to me so well and trying so hard, you're overdoing it. When I tell everybody else to round their lips, I want you to not do any more than what you're already doing, because she had developed it was so overwhelmed. I'm surprised she was straight. So sometimes you have to rein them in a little bit, but hopefully you're hearing your kids sing alone at least once a year. It's worth it. It's going to feel like a waste of time, but if you know what's going on with them and you can give them a couple little quick, like, hey, this part of your voice there's something going on there. I want to work more on it, or I'm noticing you're singing really out of tune in your upper register. Or sometimes you're going to hear a kid come in that couldn't match pitch the year before, and they can match two pitches, and you cry together because it's an amazing, exciting experience. And again, that's when you just feel like a magical Dumbledore Harry Potter wizard. It's amazing. So I know you've all had that experience already, and it's just so special. Anyway, back to this warm up. This is for ladies, and we would have them do. So sliding through. We don't want any Britney Spears. All right. So they would slide. And I made every girl in my program sing at least a high A every day. I took my sopranos up to high C every day, and I would say, this is high A, this is high C. Look at it on the staff. You're not allowed to be scared of those notes. Same thing with their low notes. I also made my men sing in falsetto every day. We always started on G. I have not sung in falsetto this summer, so I'm not going to do that for you. But we would always start on G, and they would pitch memorize G, and I would test them on it. And we would sing across the break every day. I love sliding. I think it really, really helps them to start realizing that they can get across that little weird place. And again, gestures, pulling it down like a visor, things of that nature. Harmonic warm-ups, another great way to get students thinking, now we're moving into a rehearsal, we need to work on our ears. Work intonation, teach them what flat and sharp are. Don't just tell them, teach them. And what is the solution to when you're singing flat? What should you maybe try? What solution to when you're singing sharp? You know, you give them some power to make those decisions. This is where you want to go a cappella and challenge their ears and incorporate those Kerwin hand signs. That's for your kinesthetic babies that need to understand there's space between those notes and how big it is. Use scales, major and minor in canon. Obviously, there's a million of those. Do, re, mi, re, do. And there's Max making a guest appearance. There's also chordal exercises and chordal planing. Chordal planing is where you're singing a chord progression. It can go under a simple melody. Judy Bowers has some wonderful resources on chordal planing. And also there's just good old fashioned hymns and chorales, anything that's gonna get them starting to look at music while thinking about good tone and reading all at the same time is gonna be just dividends in the future for you. Lastly, connection. This is where we're starting to transfer into performance. So we've sung beautifully, we've built those voices, we're feeling really good about it. Now let's give them some opportunities to start to add a layer of difficulty by adding some text. So this is where you bring out your Kenneth Jennings Sing Legato book. If you don't know it, it's a great book of choral warm-ups that are little melodies. Two that most people are familiar with are sing legato, sing smoothly, and you're still making transfers. Again, look at your posture, look at your mouth shape. I'm listening to you. Are you listening? Sequenced instruction and hustling, and you're incorporating text. The other really famous one from Ken Jennings is flexibility, flexibility. But I'd recommend the whole book. There's interval work. There's all sorts of concepts. Again, it's called Sing Legato by Kenneth Jennings, formerly a director of the St. Olaf Choir. Exercises to work articulation and dynamics. Doing some of your 5-note wonders at different, do it staccato, do it legato fortissimo, do it over a short crescendo, all those things. Using your tongue twisters. Kids love tongue twisters. Here's the trick though. You can't let them sing the tongue twister with bad tone. My kids would love to be like, oh, ooh, I'm such a good singer. And they'd be like, meh, 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 on these kind of things because they're fun. I want to quickly share two. One is the alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. And you go faster, but they have to sing A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and here's some gesture. Or maybe you're doing pushing the lips forward or all those things we do. Another one my kids really loved was who washed Washington's white woolen underwear when Washington's washerwoman went west? I got that from my supervising teacher. And you do a fun little who washed Washington's white woolen underwear when Washington's washerwoman went west? Who washed Washington's white woolen underwear when Washington's washerwoman, etc. Getting faster, but demanding diction and good tone. And also exercises pulled from repertoire. If you're going to be singing some tone clusters, sing some tone clusters in warm up. If you're going to be singing some Vivaldi Gloria, use that flexibility exercise from Ken Jennings. Get them to start working on their flexibility as part of the warm up and then call back to it in rehearsal. So if you do the minimum of what I have suggested time-wise, you would do 4 minutes a day. If you do the maximum 8 minutes a day, me personally, I'm a 15-minuter. I love to warm up. I think it's super important. And I just find that the dividends it pays are worth sacrificing the rehearsal time. But again, you do you. And bring in your own exercises. Maybe try a couple of the concepts I talked about. You don't need to change your whole life based on my presentation, and you can take or leave any of it as you wish, because that's the great thing about our kind of collaborative art, is that we can take what we like and leave the rest behind. Give yourself some time to build voices. That's just the most important thing. Be intentional. and give your students the opportunity to engage with some grown-up thoughts about singing. Even those little 6th grade honeys can start to think about head voice and chest voice, radio voice and classical voice, and all those wonderful things. Now, let's talk about the looming elephant in the room. Normally at this point in the presentation, I would take you through a simulated warm up based on the ideas I've just presented. But today I thought I'd like to give you a couple of ideas that I just kind of thought of ways that you can incorporate still teaching tone and technique into your what's likely to be a virtual classroom. So obviously you can do mini voice lessons, clearly. But here are just some other ideas. This is your opportunity to teach vocabulary and concepts. How about have them find an example of bright tone and dark tone on a YouTube video and submit those links to you with a 5-sentence justification. Where, can they talk about it, what you've taught? And that might require some setup from you. All these things, it depends on what you've already done. You might need to do some units of instruction before these exercises. There's a great online printable larynx that you can construct and print out and construct at home. What about finding 3 online vocal instruction resources that have bad information and then correct them so that they have better information? That's the thing about letting kids watch YouTube videos where they talk about teaching people to sing, is that there's a wide variety of thought out there. So it might be an opportunity to help them discern a little bit, like, this is probably not a quality resource. What if they did an analysis of a video of a great singer singing live? We know that pop music is overproduced, but so is our modern classical music recordings of operas and oratorios. Those are overproduced and cut to ribbons so they get perfect performances. And no performance is ever perfect. So find someone singing live and talk about how they're using their face. Look at their eyebrows right now. Oh, look at her teeth. Look at her mouth. Look, she took a small breath, then she took a big breath. Why did she do that? And then use singers of all genres and abilities. I think that one of the finest singers ever to walk the face of the earth was Ella Fitzgerald. If you want to give your students a masterclass on phrasing, play them some Ella ballads, because she spins it like nobody does. Another great person that is off maybe their beaten track these days, but play some Barbra Streisand belting some of those notes that go on forever and ever. Play Shoshana Bean. Shoshana Bean can out riff Christina Aguilera. She can out head whistle tone Ariana Grande, and she can sing classical lyric soprano. So that's a great opportunity to maybe build some ideas of, like, oh, good technique is good technique is good technique. A couple more things. Every student keeps track of their own range and breath support. This week, when we were working together as a class, I was able to, my breath support number was 20. And, while you're warming up, you're saying, okay, that top note was a C. If that was your top note today, write that down. A good chance to practice notation as well. Explore breathing exercises that you can lead in a virtual classroom. My students always spend at least 1 day a year lying on the floor in my classroom with a book on their lower abdomen doing some weightlifting. That's something you can replicate at home. Create some videos of yourself using bad technique or bad posture and have the students identify and problem solve. Instead of, maybe if you want to do something a little more voice lessoning, use a really short folk style solo that you can teach them quickly, and then let them submit individual recordings where you get feedback, like maybe the first 2 phrases of Down by the Sally Gardens or something like that. And lastly, develop a unit on vocal maladies and disorders and do a little mini poster session. Google Slides and PowerPoint slides work great as like a mini interactive poster. You can put them all together into a slideshow, have your students look at their colleagues' work. They make, there's just a million things you can do with that. I also just recently did a presentation here in Florida on engaging non-rehearsal activities for the secondary choral classroom. This is also available for free on YouTube, thanks to FBA, Head's House of Music, and Hal Leonard. But it also has a whole Dropbox or Google Drive folder of resources that are not rehearsal based. So they're aimed at building musicianship skills, composition, dictation, listening, just a variety of things. And again, this is presented to you in the spirit of, this is a time when we are pooling our resources as a community. And if you have great ideas, please share them on social media groups. I'm a choir director on Facebook, ACDA, with your colleagues in your district. This is the time when we all have to come together and really support each other as we do something that is completely outside of our box. And we don't have a team with us at school that's going to help us come up with choral-based activities for our department. So we are relying on each other, and that's the wonderful, magical thing about the choral community. So I'm going to open up the floor to some questions, but I want to say again, thank you to Voices United and these 3 wonderful state ACDA chapters. Thanks for Max, who was our tech guy today, and Alice for being my wonderful host. They were both excellent. I enjoyed speaking with them this morning. So if we have any questions, I would love to try to answer them in these next few minutes.
Absolutely. We're seeing a lot of agreement and inspiration for your presentation today. So thank you so much. Let's try to get through as many questions as we can before our hard deadline at 10:30. Our first one is, let's say you planned an amazing warm-up, but you start the class and the kids are in a different place emotionally or vocally than you anticipated. Do you adjust your plan?
Absolutely. And I think that that commenter is probably a great teacher because she is used to reading her room. There are days when it just is not going to happen, and that's okay. And again, you do you know your kids, you know your program, but don't let it become, well, they don't really like it, so I'm not going to do it. You might have to force them. We all know like that, oh, but Mr. Kilpatrick, I don't like this piece. And then at the end of the year, like, that piece is my favorite, I loved it so much. It's the same kind of thing. If you give them there's going to be a learning curve, and you're going to have to cheerlead, and you're going to have to be intense and maybe not so nice about it sometimes, but fight for it. But are there days when it's not going to happen? Yes. And you, as a smart reader of the room, you're always aware of what's going on. If it's just not going to happen, it's not going to happen. And some days they just can't sing in tune. We've all had that experience. So absolutely. A great teacher is ready to go with anything at a moment's notice. So I would say be ready to, yes, absolutely is the final answer.
Well, thank you so much. Our next question is, could you please say more about humming and variations while humming in mouth space, placement, etc.? Particularly, what should humming warm-ups accomplish?
I think humming warm-ups are a great way to talk about space. Often kids' natural humming is teeth together or a closed inside, and you want to advocate more of an ah inside. Again, a wonderful colleague of mine, Dale Choate, and was talking with me, and he was saying, kids tend to sing like Muppets, where they open their mouth like this, mwah, mwah, mwah. And we want them to sing like mwah, mwah, mwah. So I think humming can be used to build in that space between the teeth. You can also give them a baby carrot or a Ricola cough drop. Lasagna, what? A Ricola cough drop to hold between their teeth. Be careful though, because if you're holding something between your teeth to experience space, could lead to tension. But I think humming is a space exercise. It's also just kind of an easy way to start the vocalization. And you can experiment with space. I hope that sort of answered the question. I love to use hums into open. And then you start occluded, opening.
Thank you so much. We had some more questions, but it looks like we're almost out of time. So thank you so much. And if you have time to answer, you could respond in the chat, or please send an email, because you have been a wealth of knowledge today. So thank you so much.
But please email me. I'm happy to share resources and talk with you about it. Or if you want to comment on the YouTube video, I'll come in a couple times and check there and try to answer questions. But I hope people found this helpful. And again, thank you to Alice and Max and Voices United. Have a great day. Stay safe, stay healthy, keep loving your kids. That's the most important thing about what we're doing right now, is loving kids. So that's what it's all about. But hopefully they sing